Hi there, Nate Urandi, Orion Training Systems. I'm getting a lot of questions about doping in sports in general, not just cycling, but any endurance sport. And the questions I'm getting are, how do we know that athletes are doping when there are very few, less than 1% of actual positive tests coming back from all of the in and out of competition testing? And the answer is actually quite simple, but I'm going to take a step back quickly. So back in the 80s and even before then, it was amphetamines and stimulants that were taken in pill form, caffeine that was either taken in pill form or suppository forms. And so those were the stimulants mainly used. There were also steroids. Steroids have been rampant for decades. But it was in the 90s with obviously the advent of EPO, and I would actually say in the late 80s with the advent of blood doping that the game changed. And certainly no better morally before then, but the game certainly changed, and all of a sudden we're seeing 10, 15% improvement in performance due to blood doping and EPO. But then some funny things happened. For example, in cycling, the Festina affair in 98 or 97, Kofidi, same thing. And all of a sudden, you've got Lance Armstrong in 1999 with the Tour of Renewal, and nothing changed. But in the mid-2000s with Operation Puerto, all of a sudden the skids hit. Like, you look at trends in performance, and 2007, 2008, you see this sharp decline in performance because all of a sudden there was a massive oh shit moment that rocked the sporting world, where any sport that actually tested for performance enhancing drugs, those athletes realized, I could be at risk here. But then all of a sudden things changed. You see another upswing in performance, and you're seeing times in supposedly clean sports that are approaching, if not exceeding, the times or the performances of known dopers, or times during periods of high octane doping. So what's changed? Nobody's clean. Nobody's clean if they're outdoing the times of known doping periods. Get over it. What's changed is the way athletes dope, and it's been a methodical scientific progression. We go from high octane stuff such as EPO and blood doping to microdosing. What do I mean by that? Instead of massive syringes of EPO, very small doses that can be taken more frequently, and that over time add up to the same types of benefits. That's why we're seeing, for example, in cycling, the same watts per kilo that we saw back in the late 90s to early 2000s as we are seeing today. The thing is of the microdosing is that you're not going to be flagged with a positive test, given that athletes know they cannot be tested between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. So you microdose in the evening, and by the next morning, it's out of your system, but the benefits of that remain. Another thing is that there's been a shift from the high octane stuff to a circumvention of the system. TUEs, therapeutic use exemptions. So what does that mean? If you look at the stats, it's astounding at how many athletes that should be on their deathbeds that are actually performing at the highest level of the sport in which they compete. Whether it's a Chris Froome or Bradley Wiggins in cycling, to track stars, to baseball players, you name it. There's a rash of syndromes throughout the professional and elite sporting system. Whether it's ADHD or asthma or, pick a malady, and all of a sudden the sporting world is rife with them. And so you have this massive uptick in TUEs, and therefore you have a massive uptick in athletes who are now using banned substances to keep these sicknesses in check. And because they have a TUE in place, they're able to use these prohibited substances and gain the benefits of those and therefore have the performance enhancement. When you look at today's Tour de France stars, they are rail thin. And you look at the same folks who won Tour de France's in past decades, they're way more robust, more muscular, bigger people. So now, also with these TUEs, you're getting corticosteroid-based TUEs that allow for a siphoning of fat. And so you've got these ultra-lean people that you're seeing a precedence never before seen within the sport. And let's make no mistake, it's not because things are being done differently today on a legal basis. For decades, probably since the sport's inception, since we're talking about cycling here, weight has been a well-known factor. I mean, Eddie Merckx, for God's sakes, used to drill holes into all of his equipment for climbing stages on the bike. He knew what a penalty weight was. And so you've got guys who were ultra lean, ultra fit, but they didn't cross the line from a TUE perspective to make themselves even leaner. So you've got, I can't pronounce the substance, but one of the TUEs that allows you access to triamcinolone or whatever it's called, you can actually spot reduce pockets of fat. So you can go to certain areas where you're carrying a little extra baggage, shoot it in there, and it dissolves it. So that's what we're at now. So in any case, hopefully that sheds a little light on the evolution of performance-enhancing drugs. There is no cleanliness out there. Get over it. Just because athletes are not being caught in no way indicates that sports are any cleaner. In fact, there could be as many as 50, 60, some people are even saying 90% of professional athletes within any given sport are juiced. 90% sounds a little high to me. 60%, 2/3, I think that's more than realistic. There will always be some whose moral compass does not navigate towards cheating, hell or high water. So I got to think that 1/3 of athletes are that way. But 2/3, any sport, amateur, pro, not a surprise at all. So I'll leave you with that. As always, all questions and comments and criticisms welcome. You can leave it below or get in touch with me directly. As always, happy training.